So we are now in the aftermath of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, where he was acquitted of 2 counts of intentional homicide plus other charges. Now that the case is over, the media, Kyle himself, his attorneys are sort of doing the rounds, dissecting, analyzing, and seeing what happened. Kyle Rittenhouse recently gave an interview with Tucker Carlson, which was very fascinating all around. But I found it particularly fascinating because of the comments that Mr. Rittenhouse gave about the lawyers that he had at the beginning of his case. Additionally, Kyle's criminal defense attorney at the trial, Mark Richards, went on CNN, talked with Chris Cuomo, and also made some very interesting comments about the attorneys that Kyle had at the beginning of his case. Now, I find this fascinating all around, but I also think it's very important because it will give you some insight into the practice of law, the correct way to practice law, where attorneys go wrong, and exactly what it means to be a criminal defense attorney. So join me as we watch parts of these interviews, each of them, one with Rittenhouse, one with Mark Richards, and I give you my 2 cents at the end of watching these videos in order to give you a deeper understanding of the practice of criminal defense and a deeper understanding of the criminal justice system overall. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you do 2 out of 4 of those, like my videos and subscribe, it goes a long way towards YouTube promoting my channel further in the algorithm and also getting me closer to monetizing this channel, where I do legal news, legal analysis, and provide legal information to the masses. I'm a practicing Pittsburgh criminal defense, family law, and injury attorney. Now, before we watch the first video with Kyle Rittenhouse and Tucker Carlson, everybody have a sip with me. Raise your hand, raise your cup, raise your glass in the air. Today I'm drinking my Coke Zero with no ice like they do in Europe. Cheers. All right, and to set us up for this conversation, we're going to watch a portion of the Rittenhouse and Tucker Carlson interview.
How long were you there?
I was in jail for 87 days, and this follows in with Lynn Wood, Lynn Wood was raising money on my behalf, and he held me in jail for 87 days, disrespected my wishes, put me on media interviews, which I should never have done, which he said, oh, you're going to go talk to the Washington Post, which was not a good idea. Along with John Pierce, they said I was safer in jail instead of at home with my family. And then after I'm bailed.
Your lawyer said that?
My lawyer said that. John Pierce and Lynn Wood.
87 days is a long time to be in jail.
It was very long. I lost a lot of weight in there. I since then gained it back.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. But 87 days of not being with my family, for defending myself and being taken advantage to, being used for a cause by John Pierce and Lynn Wood, trying to trying to raise money so they can take it for their own benefit, not trying to set me free.
So you think they could have raised the money for bail faster, but they didn't?
I believe sometime in September 5th, I want to say, they had over $1 million, and bail was set and able to be posted in September. So they could have had me sign the waiver for extradition and had me back in Wisconsin, and I could have been bailed out by mid-September. But they wanted to keep me in jail until November 20th.
What was that like?
It was scary in jail. Like, you had to watch over yourself, and not a lot of people liked me in jail until the funny thing is, a lot of people didn't like me in jail, but they got to hear like my story, and they got to understand me. Like, he's actually a really decent person. I'm not this person that the media painted him out to be. And it was scary, but I was able to make friends, I'd say, acquaintance in jail, and like play spades, card games with them.
Okay, so you hear Kyle say that he believes that his attorneys held him in jail longer than they should have. And he's talking about Lynn Wood and John Pierce. Just to clarify there, a person's own lawyers cannot actually hold them in jail. But I see what he's saying. What happened is he had a bond set at a very high amount. I believe that it was a $2 million or so bond, and he needed to post that. And so Linwood and Mr. Pierce come in, and they're raising that money. And Kyle's saying that they had the money in mid-September, but didn't actually post his bond until November 20th. I don't know if there's any truth to that. If that is true, that goes against a lot of the values and that a criminal defense attorney stands for. However, there are additional things that have to be taken into account in a situation like that. They told Kyle that he would be safer in jail than outside of jail. Now, it's true that sometimes that can be the case. And you can also make the argument here that because his face was being flashed across every television in America during some of the largest riots and protests that the country has seen in 30, 40 plus years, that there is some truth to that. However, jail can also be a dangerous place for a lot of reasons. You don't always get the correct medical attention that you need. Plus, you could come under attack from another inmate. So it's really hard to say that, usually the number one thing that you are concerned with as a criminal defense attorney when your client hires you is getting them out of jail as quickly as possible. One funny thing about this interview, he said he played hearts. Well, I don't know if that's funny, but that's a lot of what guys do when they're in jail. I've been in the jail many times. I've never been sent to jail by a judge, but I've been in the pods, and usually in the pods on the floor level of the jail, that's what's going on. There's going to be one or two card games. Some guys are going to be watching TV. Some guys are going to be getting their haircuts. This is at a regular county jail. State prison's a little bit different, but I've been into the pods. I've viewed that on several occasions. Now, Kyle's interview gives us a lot of the context, but I do think there's some more important context here to be gained from this interview between Chris Cuomo and Mark Richards, who also has some comments that actually cut a little bit against what Kyle said. So let's listen to what his defense attorney at the trial has to say for some additional context.
Now, there was a lot said tonight about the first legal team. And just to make sure, anybody who was listening to the interview tonight or reads about it, Kyle Rittenhouse was not talking about the guy on the show right now, okay? He's talking about his original legal team, specifically a man named Lynn Wood. Now, what I thought was a little confusing tonight, Mark, and I want your take on this, is that why is Lynn Wood a bad guy? He's a bad guy because of how he handled this case and because he is certainly one who co-opted Kyle Rittenhouse for political ambitions, no?
Yes. And, I've been threatened with a lawsuit for what I said on your show on Friday night. I stand by what I said. It's my opinion. They were using Kyle to raise money. John Pierce and Lynn Wood. John Pierce, and I'll say this because it's the truth and we have the bills to back it up, was billing this kid at $1,200 an hour for going out and buying a shirt for him, for taking his family to breakfast or lunch. It's ridiculous. And, there might be some attorney somewhere on the earth that's worth $1,200 an hour. It's not John Pierce.
Now, look, one of the things that didn't come out tonight, and it didn't come out for bad reason, it has nothing to do with your client, has nothing to do with you, but it does have to do with the situation and the venue. Lynn Wood is a suspicious character because he has been peddling the same kind of Trumpy rigged election stuff as the guy who interviewed your client tonight. And does that concern you at all about what it attaches an 18-year-old to?
Well, I mean, Kyle had the common sense and good judgment to get away from Lynn Wood, and I give him credit for that. Lynn said, and it's what he said to me when he threatened to sue me, I wasn't his criminal attorney. If he wasn't his criminal attorney, he shouldn't have been inserting himself in the decisions that were being made in his criminal case. And that means having him interviewed by the Washington Post. He denies that, but other attorneys in the case all know that it's true. And I'm not going to mention their names because it's just going to cause problems for them. I'm big enough, I'll take it. But I spoke to Lynn Wood's attorney, Lawson Pettigrew, today. There won't be a retraction for what I said because it's the truth. And I don't know what Lynn's game is. He's got enough problems than to start one with me, I guess. But who knows?
Let's give some context to why you feel as strongly as you do. Here's what your client had to say about his former attorney.
87 days of not being with my family for defending myself and being taken advantage to, being used for a cause by John Pierce and Lynn Wood, trying to trying to raise money so they can take it for their own benefit, not trying to set me free.
Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree with the premise of it and what he's saying. I mean, the only thing I have a bit of a slide with on Kyle and that is they still did raise the $2 million to get him out. And that was a huge positive. It made my life in meeting with Kyle, preparing for trial, incredibly easier, I should say, than anything else. When you have to go and meet with a client in the jail, you're being monitored, you're worried about people listening in on your conversations. I was able to meet with Kyle in my office in my conference room alone. If Kyle had been in custody, not been able to make that bond, we wouldn't have been able to do the mock trials, test out our theories. It could have been a different result. So we're thankful that they got him out. They did have the money to get him out much earlier, and I don't think they worked to do it until there was some squawking by Wendy, Kyle's mother.
So a lot of interesting things said there also by Mark Richards. Now, I agree with him 100%. When your client is in jail, it can make things a lot more difficult because you can't meet with them as regularly or in the right context or do the things that you can do when they are out of jail. I will say this. Sometimes, though, I've had clients who I can't get a hold of when they're out of jail. So sometimes when they're in the jail, at least I know where they are. And when I need to talk to them, I can go find them. COVID-19 pandemic has made meeting clients in the jail 10 times harder. It was not as bad pre-COVID, but now it's an absolute nightmare. So, these are all allegations. I don't know the truth or falsity of anything that's being leveled against anyone. Mr. Wood is saying that he wasn't in the criminal attorney, and if that's true, then you can play that role because some people who are faced with crimes or in lawsuits, they assemble a legal team, and each lawyer will play a different role. And in a criminal case like this, you may have the criminal defense attorney, another attorney dealing with public relations, another attorney dealing with a forthcoming civil lawsuit, right? And they all may work together as a legal team. O.J. Simpson had something like that back in his famous trial, though most of his attorneys, he had a team and most of them were all focused on the criminal defense itself, but they played other roles as well. But I think Mark Richards is right in the scenario where it should not be making decisions that affect the criminal case if they're not in that criminal role. And I don't know if Mr. Wood did or didn't do that. I thought this context was important after hearing Kyle what Kyle had to say. You wanted to hear what Mr. Richards had to say, is that, Mr. Wood was responsible for helping to raise that money. So he definitely brought a big positive to the case. Now, you think about in the grand scheme of things, Kyle was in for 86 days. He got out November 20th. He was out for a whole year before his trial. What's those 86 days? Maybe not that big a deal, maybe a big a deal. But look, every day of your life that you spend in jail is a day that you lost where you could have spent with family, friends, or doing something else. So it's really a big deal no matter what at the end of the day. Sometimes you want a client to stay in jail for a different reason. One that wasn't really at issue here, but I want you guys to understand this because every criminal case has to be treated differently. And that is, if you're setting your client up for a plea, if they're sitting in jail, they're getting time served. So those 86 days, if Kyle was convicted, those could be attributed to his sentence. He would get credit for those 86 days. Now, if you're facing a life sentence, which Kyle was with intentional homicide, credit doesn't matter. But if you're facing a year in jail, 6 months, 18 months, sometimes you would rather not post bail, because if you post bail and then get convicted, you may have to go back to jail. I've seen it happen. So sometimes the attorneys, I have this discussion with my clients. I say, look, it's better for you to sit in jail because you're getting credit, not because, it's ever better to be in jail, but you might as well do the time now so that you can get out and move on. And so not necessarily get out and then go back to jail. Now, when you're facing a life sentence or a really steep sentence, you want to get out, you want to get out, you want to get out. 90% of the time, you want to get that person out because, again, they'll be able to help in their defense of the case, like I'm sure Kyle was while preparing for the case with Mr. Rittenhouse. $1,200 an hour, and I don't know the truth of this, but Mark Richards seems to stand up to it, to do things like go to lunch and buy clothes. Well, I tend to agree with that because the legal billing for an attorney should be for actual legal work. Now, meeting with the family and things like that, but going out and buying their clothes, I would not bill my clients legal time for that. Working on their case, yes, but going out and buying clothes, at least maybe bill them at a lower rate. $1,200 is a heck of a rate, even for a city like New York or Los Angeles. That's a hell of an hourly rate. But, these attorneys appeared to be raising this money and then also paying themselves with the money that they were raising, which also creates a bit of a conflict there, I would say. Wouldn't you? I mean, it sounds to me like it's legal, but it just doesn't feel right. So that brings me back to what I really want to talk about. The number one duty of a criminal defense attorney, the number one duty is the zealous defense of your client. In all of law, I would say a criminal defense attorney's duty is clearer than anything else. Prosecutors actually have a more complex duty because the prosecutors have to zealously pursue the prosecution of their case, but they also have to make sure that they're not pursuing a frivolous case, which is something that many people would say the prosecution did here for Kyle Rittenhouse. I think it's a closer call than, I don't think it's easy to just say that given the information at the time. But if you watch Kyle's whole interview and he's like, they didn't even have a criminal complaint written and they were arresting him, it makes you think they were jumping to conclusions. But anyway, prosecutors have a very complex role. They have to enforce the criminal laws, but also be careful about not prosecuting and trying to convict people who are innocent. That's very complicated. Criminal defense, and I would argue criminal defense is harder than prosecuting because criminal defense, your client's life is on the line. Mark Richards was sitting there with his client's life on the line. Now, the prosecutor lost this case. Whatever the prosecutor does, he can't bring back the people who were lost, okay? He lost this case. Life is going to go on for those people. If Mark Richards loses this case, his client goes to jail for life. There's something to be won. For the part when you're sitting next to that human who puts everything into you, let me tell you, it's a lot of pressure. Regardless, the criminal defense attorney's duty is, and the Supreme Court has said this, is to zealously advocate for their client and do everything that they can within the rules of ethics in order to defend their client's case. So even when a client admits guilt to a criminal defense attorney, okay, it's the defense attorney's job to formulate a strategy, plan, and theory to defend the case if the client chooses to go to trial. And then the defense attorney has to take whatever information he has to the grave with him. But your number one job is to zealously advocate, and usually that means getting your client out of jail as soon as possible. And I think there was really a big interest here to do that because Rittenhouse would be so much more valuable. His defense would be so much better if he got out and was able to prepare for it. So I'll let you judge how things went here. Kyle went with these high-profile attorneys. They did raise the money for him off the bat, but ultimately, this is the guy who got him off. And I really just enjoyed Mark Richards' demeanor, everything about him. He's soft-spoken, yet still an aggressive advocate for his client and an excellent criminal defense attorney, Brian Dimmer. I think that he was viewed more favorably at the end of the day by the judge and likely by the jury as well, and that probably went a long way towards helping Kyle get acquitted. I would call Mr. Richards a lawyer's lawyer. What do I mean by that? Well, someone who takes their work, their job very seriously, a trial attorney, someone who's not maybe in it for the money, but it's not in it just for the money, still takes their role as a lawyer extremely seriously. So kudos to this gentleman. I hope that you all learned something from this video. The number one duty of a criminal defense attorney is to win the case and is to pursue the wishes and desires of the client and zealously advocate for them no matter what the cost. That's what I do. That's what I believe. Well, I don't want to say no matter what the cost. You zealously advocate for them and you do everything you can within the rules of ethics, of professional conduct that are put out by the bar associations. And that's what the Supreme Court says criminal defense attorneys should do. Thank you very much for tuning in. Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Free way to support the show. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.